blowers, like.
Hello, no. Hello, hello, hello. Check. Hello. Okay, there we go. Welcome, everyone. My name is Ann McNiff, and on behalf of the Philadelphia Cayley Group, I'd like to welcome you tonight. It is so great to see everyone's face. We figured it's been just about 2 years, if possible. Speaking for myself, I can say a few more gray hairs and a few more pounds from the shutdown and COVID. So it is great to see people once again in person. And to those of you at home, welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in. We're very happy to have you here virtually or any way we can get you. So thank you all. Just a couple housekeeping things. Restrooms are in the back and also through here. We will have about a 15-minute intermission. I've been told to tell people that there are tea sandwiches in the fireside room, should anyone be hungry. And I think that's about it. We ask no flash photography, of course, and please silence your cell phones. Tonight's entertainment comes to us from people who really don't need an introduction. It's, you know, that's sort of a cliche, but in this case, it really, really is true.
Yeah.
So
Brenda.
I then am going to say, without any further ado, please welcome Greenfields of America.
Come on, young men, will I pray draw near now, and give you to the words I'm going to say, that the people of Ireland is very well known, are emigrating to America. Oh yes, indeed, they are emigrating. That poor country they can't stand. They put their foot on board of a ship, they are sailing off to the Yankee land. Well, the night before they are due for leaving, all the neighbours in the house do throng, for to take a farewell glass and join together to sing a song. Well, they dance all night till the early morning, each one cutting all around the floor. The mother, she comes in, then weeping to see your children to the door. And the father sits inside the cabin, he sees that he is all alone. Surely his poor heart is breaking, his salt tears would melt a stone. So hurrah for the gallant sons of Erin, this poor country they can't stand. They put their foot on board of a ship, they are sailing off to the Yankee land. The other day as I went walking down the road I chanced to go, and I saw a sight approaching, and it filled me heart with woe. I saw the carriage and the coaches moving onward, forward to the train, and the handkerchiefs were waving, bidding goodbye to drawn away. So hurrah for the gallant sons of Erin, this poor country they can't stand. They put their foot on board of a ship, they are sailing off to the Yankee land. they arrive in the New York harbor. Friends assemble with good cheer, saying how's old Ireland and how's she doing and how's she coming on this year. She's the most distressed and cursed nation in this world that e'er was seen. All they're good for is process serving in that little Isle of Green. Oh yes, indeed they're emigrating from the land they love so dear. Any man that isn't married, the devil a wife he'll get next year. So hurrah for the gallant gals out there. This poor country they can't stand. They put their foot on board of a ship. They are sailing off to the Yankee land. Well, good evening to you all, and isn't it great to be back? It really is. You know, there's nowhere in America more dear to me than this very spot that I'm in right now. And a week after I arrived in this country, with a whole uncertain future ahead of me, like every immigrant that came across the Atlantic from Ireland, a week after that, I came here to this place and instantly felt at home, the Irish Centre, Carpenter and Emlen. And that was 49 years ago, and it's great to be back. I came here, and myself and Eugene O'Donnell from Derry, the great beloved son of Derry, we had a few tunes out at the bar. And I met all the great Donegal and Mayo people who'd been here before me. And it's such a pleasure to be back, and particularly here because lived in Germantown so many years, so many of those 49 years spent in Germantown. And my son Fintan, who's at the back there, he was born in Germantown and lived, first of all, 5321 Germantown Avenue, and then 38 East Penn Street, and then moved triumphantly to West Harvey Street, close to Lower Mount Airy, you know, upgrading every move. And it's great to be back. And thank you all for showing up in such great numbers tonight. We're very honoured. And I'm going to hand over for a song. That was a great song of emigration, one of the grand songs of coming over here to America and coming from there to here. This Hanley's going to sing you a song. This is from Boston. Nothing wrong with that.
I'd like to sing a song called Broken Hearted, I Will Wander, also known as the Bonnie Light Horseman. And it's a anti-war song from the time of Napoleon. And I'd like to sing this song for, we've just been, watching the news and seeing a lot of really horrible things in the Ukraine, especially recently. And so this goes out to all the broken hearts. And yeah, that's it. When Bonaparte, he commanded his troops for to stand, and he leveled his cannon all over the land. He leveled his cannon, no victory to gain, and he killed my light horseman returning from Spain. Broken hearted I will wander for the loss of my lover. He's my bonny light horseman, in the wars he was slain. If you saw my love on sentry on a cold winter's day, with his red rosy cheeks and his colors so gay, all mounted on horseback, the whole victory to gain. And it's all over the battlefield, my love wars he was slain. Oh, if I were a blackbird and had wings to fly, I would fly to the spot where my true love did lie, and with my little fluttering wings, his wounds I would heal. It's all of the night on his breast I remain broken-hearted. I will wander for the loss of my lover. He's my bonny light horseman. In the wars he was slain. Oh, the dove, she laments for her mate as she flies. Oh, where, tell me, where is my true love, she cries. Oh, where in this wild world is there one to compare? My bonny light horseman who is slain in the war. Broken-hearted, I will wander for the loss of my lover. He's my bonny light horseman. In the wars he was slain. Oh, Napoleon Bonaparte, I have done you no harm. So why, tell me, why have you caused this alarm? We were happy together, my true love and me. But now you have stretched him in his grave over the sea. Broken-hearted, I will wander for the loss of my lover. He's my bonny light horseman. In the wars he was slain. Broken-hearted, I will wander for the loss of my lover. He's my bonny light horseman. In the wars he was slain.
So beautiful to get to play music with all these folks up here. Like you, we've all been isolated and on our own, and you know, this is my lifeblood. This is all of our lifeblood. This is what gets us going, and it's one thing to be on your own and play music, and it's another thing to be in a room with all your friends and play music, and then it's yet another thing to be with your friends playing music with all of you. So thank you. A few degrees. I'd like to play a slow air, and you know, as Liz mentioned, we have a lot, just people that are in our thoughts, and this is a old melody, Irish melody called Tom Shamacola. I am sleeping and do not wake me. This is for the long sleep of those who won't awaken from this time. And then we're gonna ease into a tune by a man that some of you may have known, lived right here in Philadelphia, came from the County Cavan in 1912, plumber by trade, and he played the fiddle, and he wrote, to me, some of the most beautiful tunes that I've ever heard, ever written, absolutely, Mr. Ed Reevy. Absolutely. And we'll play one of my favorite pieces of his. The Shoemaker's Daughter, and then we're going to slip into another tune that I learned from Mick and Billy called Cuz Teehans, and he was a man who, you know, there was a time when people would, the chain migration, and people would come over when they had a relative in the States, and he became the cousin to thousands of Irish immigrants who come over. So this is also for Cuz Teehans.
Well, that was Niall O'Leary, our favourite dancing architect, all the way from Dublin, now living in New York City. And this is Brenda Castles from the County Meath.
Hello. I'm going to sing you a song now, a song about some Scottish workhorses, and it's their last day at work in the fields, and everybody depending on them for everything. And the next day, in this song, the tractors and the machinery are going to be taking over. So the big Clydesdale horses, you know, those ones that were in the Budweiser ad, those ones. The muckle horses, they're known as in Scottish dialect, I suppose, of English. So it's called The Last Trip Home. Well, I've worked in fields, and from the start, the muckle horses won my heart. With big broad backs they proudly stand, the uncrowned kings of all the land. Yet for all their power and strength, they're as gentle as a summer's wind. So steady boys, walk on, your work is nearly done. No more will till and plough the fields, the horses' day is gone. And this will be your last trip home, so steady boys, walk on. Well, you'll hear men sing their songs of praise for Arab stallions in a race, hunters that run with the hounds and chase the fox and run him down. None of them compare, I vow, to a working pair that pull a plough. So steady boys, walk on, your work is nearly done. No more will till and plough the fields, the horses' day is gone. And this will be your last trip home, so steady boys, walk on. Well, of all the years I've plied my trade, and all the fields I've ploughed and laid, I never thought I'd see the day when the Clydesdales' work would ever end. But progress runs its driven course, and tractors have replaced the horse. So steady boys, walk on, your work is nearly done. No more will till and plough the fields, the horses' day is gone. And this will be your last trip home, so steady boys, walk on. Now as we walk home, our friends have lined the road to see us one last time. None of them would want to miss the chance to see us pass like this. They'll say they saw in years to come the muckle horses' last trip home. So steady boys, walk on, your work is nearly done. No more will till and plough the fields, the horses' day is gone. And this will be your home, so steady boys, walk on. Your work is nearly done. No more will till and plow the fields. The horse's day is gone. And this will be your last trip home, so steady boys, walk on.
God, that's one of the songs you don't want it to end, you know? Just so lovely. And a lot of people, familiar faces here tonight. And I'd like to acknowledge one in particular, one of the great humanitarians that I've ever met, and an example of a life lived magnificently in the shadow of poverty in North Philadelphia, in a place that at one point was the home of the worst projects in Pennsylvania, perhaps in the whole country, and unimaginable poverty, deprivation. He's worked there selflessly his whole life. Father John McNamee is here with us tonight. Where are you, Mac? There you are. There he is, the mighty man, the mightiest of mighty men. And thanks to Jim Martin for being his chauffeur tonight. And tell you, great to have you here, John, mighty man. And you know, I don't remember the year exactly, but a car pulled up outside 20 West Harvey Street one day, and I saw two people coming in, and one was a distinguished, well, by the standards of the time, a man, I think in his 40s or 50s. And there was another young lad carrying a banjo with him. And I said, what in the name of God are they coming here? Who are they? And they knocked on the door and they introduced themselves. And it was Seamus Egan and his father from, at that time, Drexel Hill. And I said, so what brings you here? He says, well, I've arrived in Philadelphia a couple of years ago, and I was born here, but I'd been in Mayo for a while. And I'm learning the banjo, and he said, competing in the All-Ireland competition, he said, in a few weeks' time, he said, could you give me a tip or two? And I said, well, I'd be glad to tell you whatever I can. So remember, this was the era of cassette tapes. You remember cassette tapes, some of you, right? And so I put on an old cassette recorder, and I put on about 40 minutes and tipping away in the banjo, a few jigs, a few reels, a few hornpipes. I go away now, and I said, and learn them and see, and come back. And I expected maybe about 6 months or a year I might see the person. He came back the following week, he had them all off. And I said, God almighty, I said, I can teach you nothing, you're on your own now. And that was Seamus Egan when he was 11. And he won the All-Ireland title, went back, and you all know Seamus Egan, one of the great musicians from this city, in the group Solace, which made a hugely significant contribution to the cultural life of Irish America. And he wrote, remember the Brothers McMullen, that big successful movie, he wrote the soundtrack for that as well. And a couple of years ago, he gave me a CD, and I stuck it in my music case, and I didn't think much of it. And then I found it one day in New York, and I put it on, and it was an LP or a CD called The Shamrock City. And I heard a song called Michael Conway, and it stopped me in my tracks, and I played it. I played it again, and then I played it again, and I said, holy mother of God, how could a song written recently sound so old? And, you know, it was about the Irish in the copper mines of Butte, Montana. So I called up Seamus. He said, well, I wrote the melody, he said. And my friend, accordion player Mick from County Kilkenny, wrote the words. I said, how could he write words like that? So I called Mick up in Ireland, and he told me that he once he went to Butte, Montana, which at one point was the most Irish city in America in terms of the density of population, percentage of people born in Ireland. And it was the home of the copper mines. And of course, after electricity was invented, the copper became the most valuable commodity in the world. And the richest hill on earth was the hill of Butte, Montana, and developed by Marcus Staley, the Irish-born entrepreneur, who became, by the standards of today, a multi-billionaire. First one, really, along with John Mackey, who discovered the copper or the silver mines, the Comstock Lode in Virginia City, Nevada. So he said, I started to read about it, and he named about 4 books. He said, then I felt ready to write a song about the Irish in that time in America around the turn of the 20th century. Seamus Egan had a story in his family that was passed on of a great-granduncle who died mysteriously out in Butte, Montana, knew nothing about it. But when he went out there to play there, performed there, and myself and Billy and Athena were there a few years ago. It's an extraordinary place. Still the richest hill on earth, strangely enough. And he was able to research the story of his great-granduncle Michael Conway, who was a bare-knuckle boxer and who died mysteriously there. And with the help of Mick McCauley, they wrote what was one of my favourite songs. And it's rooted in the Irish-American experience. God only knows so many people whose story will never be told. And in a way, these songs, they access kind of a collective memory. They're very important, I think. But apart from that, it's just a lovely piece of art. I hope to be able to do it justice. A bit hoarse tonight, but sure, as Desmond Mulcair would say, you wouldn't mind that, right? Oh, me name is Michael Conway. In old Ireland I was born, near the lake of Clunacolly, on a bright summer's morn. And then came cruel winter to break and scatter my poor bones. And then came the harsh day that forced me to roam. And we reached bold Philadelphia in the brave land of the free. And I met with my 2 brothers. There was Pat, James, then me. And we were destined for the rich land. Fate owns us all from birth. And we were bound for Butte, Montana, the richest hill on earth, where the pockets they bulge heavy when the copper's running high, where the hill rewards its brave sons, its fortune or die, where we tread on silver dollars on a crowded barroom floor, as we strip the granite mountain of its precious copper ore. Well, we leaped down off the steam train and went out into the yellow mist. There was hope still in our hearts then, and a fight in either fist. No kind face to lead us up to where the dirty smelters spat. And it's there I took to hard labour as a Butte mining rat, where we trade the hours of daylight for the smell of copper ore, where it's whiskey and a cowpack to treat our copper sores, where half the town it labours while the other half it sleeps upon the granite mountain a mile high and deep. Oh, they know me down in Dogtown bare-knuckled I would go, but there's not a man could best me while standing toe to toe. Ah, but I defy the crooked sheriff, for I wouldn't throw his fight away. He should have laid it on at 5-2 and backed the bold Conway. I was taken in Con Peoples with the beer and music flowing free. Me brothers, they had left me bad fortune for me. Dragged out by crooked cowards, and their battens knocked me off my feet. And they left me to die there like a dog on the street. Far from the anaconda, the mine with 7 stacks. Far from the ashen faces of young men with crooked backs. Far from the granite mountain and the dirty grave in which I lie. My spirit chases starlings through a clear Mayo sky. I think the lad from Drexel Hill did just fine. Niall O'Leary's going to dance. He'll tell you about the dance.
You're not.
You're not. No.
Is there a switch? Check if there's a switch.
I'll translate if you want.
Try the other one.
Hey, there you go.
We're live all over the world tonight. So I'm going to dance a hornpipe from you that I learned in Dublin from one of my dancing teachers, Rory O'Connor. Now anyone who came over from Ireland in the 50s might remember a radio show called Take the Floor with Dingle. And Rory O'Connor used to dance every week on this radio show, doing Irish dancing. And the story is, he was the first man in Ireland to dance on the radio, and he never fell off.
Well, since we were here last, one of us here got the highest award that a traditional artist can get in America, the National Heritage Award, Mr. Billy McComiskey from Brooklyn in New York.
Oh, my Lord. Well, thank you very much. It's downright embarrassing to be a National Heritage Fellowship recipient in the presence of these magnificent artists. What do you think? What do you think of this guy? Really, it's amazing. I was lucky I got to do gigs. I actually got Father Lou Thompson and his wife, Peggy Reardon. It's amazing. His order went bankrupt, so he was able to marry the love of his life after he met her. So when the order went bankrupt, I immediately believed in God. That's pretty good, right? And he had got me a gig down in right there on Capitol Hill. You might have been in there if you've been down to D.C. sightseeing. It's called the Dubliner, right on Capitol Hill. You familiar with that? So they were the people that Father Lou was able to convince these guys that if you want to have an authentic bar, this is very early on in the whole Irish pub scene, and he was trying to tell them, you have to go with something real, and have to go with something that's actually Irish. At that time, the pints were not very good. I don't even know if they had I don't think they had pint glasses in the Dubliner back then. It was pretty sad. And he says, if you want to try, and he said, I can guarantee you this, the food is definitely not authentic. They actually had beef O'Flaherty, which was leftover roast beef from the night before, cooked in, what do you call that green cheese? The
Sage? No? Green cheese?
In this cheese, I can't even think of that. So that was, and what he said that at that point, an Irish, what was it? A 7-course Irish meal. You probably have heard this many times. Was actually a 6-pack of beer and a potato. That's how bad things were. So, and then just kind of magically with the Smithsonian Folklife Festival, National Council for the Traditional Arts, all these great things. You having a good time? So here was all these great things going on down there, and it just kind of, out of nowhere, my friend Brenda Mulvihill and I started playing the odd things that we had learned off Chieftains records. The Chieftains were really getting popular, so maybe 1974, 1975, thereabouts. And we actually just started learning tunes that they were playing, looking them up, finding out what they were, and we got all into the life and times of Turlough O'Carolan. And all these beautiful, what was it? Was it the 17th century, or when? Around
Close enough.
It was very, very early on. Mick could tell you properly. And I'll be darned, this friend of ours was down on summer holiday playing in a couple of the bars. His name was Bruce Foley. Have any of you ever heard of Bruce Foley? And he married Mary Coogan, right? And was Joni Madden just down here? Joni, as we call her now, she's down to. So Bruce was like this genius. He was studying the bassoon. He decided to learn to play the most challenging instrument that he could find. And he fell in love. He was playing the bassoon, and he ended up with a beautiful Elian Piper. But he also just picked up and learned to play classical guitar. We were just Brenda and I were just talking about this earlier. I think I kept it shorter the last time.
Marginally.
So there we were, sitting in Capitol Hill in a beautiful backyard. I don't even know if the house was restored. It was worth millions. It was just great. And Bruce and myself and Brendan, and Bruce just started playing this absolutely beautiful O'Carolan tune that none of us had ever heard before. Just the loveliest, nicest thing. And I tried to play it, and I couldn't. I wasn't much good at playing in different keys then. So he was going like this, if you're a musician. He was playing away in A, and I said, I can't play it there. Can you play it in an easier key? He says, I think I'll try to play it in G. And he just went, he wasn't moving some gadget around or something. He just completely changed and reconfigured the whole tune. And we sat there. I had to write it down. Brendan had it off in about maybe 45 minutes. This absolutely beautiful piece of music. And Brendan and I just kind of left it there. Brendan was kind enough to leave it in G so I could play it with him. And I hear from Irish musicians all the time, very knowledgeable players, talking about, well, that's in the wrong key. That's not G, that's A, you know. And
This
they're
is from
right.
someone who learned it last week.
Yeah, and they're right, because that is kind of what this absolutely beautiful music is. It's alive and it changes. So here's this tune. It's called Loftus Jones, and I believe we're going to murder it. No, we'll play good. I deserve a hand. I deserve a round of applause. Give me. Thank you. I don't do that for you.
Now you know.
Okay, well, I'm going to sing a song now. The song is called The River Lee, and it's about a man who is walking around looking for work and decides that he's going to sign up to be a sailor, and he hops on board this ship called the River Lee, and they make their way across to Canada, to the Bay of Fundy, which is a very treacherous journey. And he swears that he'll never go to sea again after surviving that. And actually, just you may have heard a bit of good news this week. The ship, the Endurance, was found. So I don't know. It's not exactly the same story, but it's a pretty cool piece of news. It's nice to get a bit of good news. That's really interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen the pictures of the videos, but it's perfectly distilled ship.
Yeah, and the best
in
part
ice.
of it was that there was a banjo discovered.
No way.
It was. An actual
course
banjo
there
on the
was.
ship Endurance. This is the best news that I've heard for many, many years.
And it was going so
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, it was going so well.
Yeah, so to the guys who found Endurance, amazing piece of history happened this week. So, the River Lee. 'Twas one fine day in the month of May, and I was outward bound. I hadn't eaten for to buy some gin, so I wandered the streets all around. My jacket's out at the elbows, and I was in sore need, so I signed as a jolly sailor on board of the River Lee. I'll go to sea no more, beat down the Bay of Fundy, forevermore I'll stay on shore, I'll go to sea no more. No more I'll take my first look out, no more I'll take my wheel, no more at the cry up aloft I'll fly, while I, sir, I squeal. No more I'll reef those topsails in, for it is no more my trade. No more I'll brail the spankers down on board of the River Lee. I'll go to sea no more, beat down the Bay of Fundy, forevermore I'll stay on shore, I'll go to sea no more. No more I'll pull on the lee force brace, nor my royal halyard stand. No more I'll ride the swifters down, the tar pot in my hand. No more I'll cross those royal yards, nor fly that furling jib. No more I'll shift gaff topsail tacks on board of the River Lee. I'll go to sea no more, beat down the Bay of Fundy, forevermore I'll stay on shore, I'll go to sea no more.
go to sea no more. Be down the Bay of Fundy, forevermore I'll stay on shore. I'll go to sea no more. Forevermore I'll stay on shore. I'll go to sea no more.
Well, we're going to do one more song and take a break. And we're the Greenfields of America, as you know. The group was founded back in 1978 in Washington, D.C. as a result of the participation of a lot of Irish-American musicians, alongside musicians that came over from Ireland as part of the Smithsonian's Institution's Festival of American Folklife, and that was the bicentennial year when America embraced the notion that we're a culture that's filled with diversity, a multicultural nation, that everyone is welcome and everyone has their heritage and still can be American. And that was a national moment, really, and that was the time, many of you remember, perhaps of a certain vintage, like myself, of Alex Haley's Roots, and people were talking about roots and cultural heritage in a new way. And plugged into that was Irish music, and we were delighted Billy was there. And out of that came the group, the Greenfields of America. We got some grants from the newly formed National Endowment for the Arts, Folk Arts Division, and we toured across America several times. Our first dancer, we thought we'd bring music and song and dance together. Our first dancer was Michael Flatley. I often wondered what happened to him. And over the years, there have been many people over. It was never meant to be a fixed group because everyone had day jobs at the time. And so I often say that every dog and divil in Irish music in America has been in the group at one time or another. And it's just great. We don't play that much, really. We're not a full-time group at all. And it's great to get together for the friendship, really, as much as the music itself, and to be in the presence of people like yourself listening to the music. It's really every artist's dream come true to be able to do this on a stage like this. And of course, a lot of the people we learn from, they never had the chance to be on a stage with a nice sound system and lighting like this. So we feel very honoured. We don't take it for granted. It's something we appreciate every single day. We like to concentrate more on the songs and music over here than over there, because it's an epic tale. There's 60 million people around the world of Irish ancestry. That's our diaspora. And at this time of the year, more than ever, I suppose, we're united through a sense of peoplehood, a sense of belonging, a sense of heritage, and particularly through the arts, literature, poetry, and music. And John McNamee is a fine poet himself, and of course through music and dance. So this is a song written by a man. Sorry. A little sip of water would be good. Written over here in America by a man called Johnny Patterson, who was from County Clare, and he was a circus clown, but he was much more than that. He was a piper, and he came over to New York and lived in New York for a while, but moved down to Philadelphia. He played in Chicago, Boston, and he was known as the Rambler from Clare. And he wrote songs. Maybe some of you have heard of The Stone Outside Dan Murphy's Door. It's a very well-known song in Ireland. And there are other songs that would be well known, thanks to Athena. And he wrote this one called Bridget Donahue that I like. We're going to finish our first set with this, and we're going to have a real, because we came up with this, I think for about 4 seconds of thinking, called the Commodore Reel. Why wouldn't we in this place? Written by Billy McComiskey. So anyway, Bridget Donahue. 'Twas in the County Kerry, not many miles from Clare, where the boys and girls are merry at a pattern race or fair. The town is called Killorglin, a pretty place to view, but what makes it interesting is my Bridget Donahue. Oh, Bridget Donahue, I really do love you. Although I'm in America, to you I'll prove true. Bridget Donahue, I tell you what to do. Just take the name of Patterson and I'll take Donahue. Her father is a farmer, and a decent man is he, and he's known by everybody from Killorglin to Tralee. and Bridget on a Sunday, while coming home from Mass. Sure, the people all admire her and they sought to see her pass. Oh, Bridget Donahue, I really do love you. Although I'm in America, to you I will prove true. Bridget Donahue, I tell you what to do. Just take the name of Patterson and I'll take Donahue. I sent to you a picture, I did upon my word. Not a picture of myself, but a picture of a bird. It was the American eagle, and says I, Miss Donahue, our eagle's wings are large enough to shelter me and you. Oh, Bridget Donahue, I tell you I do love you. Although I'm in America, to you I will prove true. Bridget Donahue, I'll tell you what to do. Just take the name of Patterson and I'll take Donahue. 'Twas in the county Kerry, not many miles from Clare, where the boys and girls are merry at the pattern race affair. The town is called Killorglin, a pretty place to view. But what makes it interesting is my Bridget Donahue. Oh, Bridget Donahue, I really do love you. Although I'm in America, to you I will prove true. Bridget Donahue, I'll tell you what to do. Just take the name of Patterson and I'll take Donahue. Oh, Bridget Donahue, I really do love you. Although I'm in America, to you I will prove true. Bridget Donahue, I'll tell you what to do. Just take the name of Patterson and I'll take Donahue. We do have some CDs for sale in case you want to bring home some.
Hello, hello, hello. Hello and welcome back, everyone. Have you had a good time so far? Yeah. I hope all of you at home have had a good time too. Just a couple announcements as we go forward into being able to come together again. The Ceilidh group has continued to have our monthly Ceilidh dances. We also have a First Friday music session. Last month, actually, they started dance lessons before the session. So please check out our website, and it'll have all the information. We also have a monthly singer session. For those of you who will be attending the parade tomorrow, or those of you who won't be attending the parade tomorrow, be sure to stop by the Irish Center afterwards. There's going to be lots of things happening here, including a St. Patrick's Day dinner for $20, and there will also be music by Vince Gallagher. There'll be dance lessons by John Shields. There will be children's activities that John informs me that adults may participate in as well. I don't know what those are. But anyway, so please come by after the parade, or if you don't make it out to the parade, come on by after 3 o'clock. And without any further ado, please welcome back the Greenfields of America.
I'm going to start with a song written by Dan Emmett, whose grandfather came from Mayo. Dan Emmett was born in Ohio, and you can blame Dan Emmett for bringing the banjo to Ireland. 1843, part of the Virginia Minstrels, a very troubling chapter in American musical history and a subject, I suppose, of much discussion. But it was the Virginia Minstrels in 1843 who introduced the banjo to Ireland, and also this song, which he wrote that same year in New York City. And he wrote it about the Ohio River, and of course going across the Ohio River. He wrote it when he was in Cincinnati and looking across the river at the slave state of Kentucky. And of course, Cincinnati being the home of the Underground Railroad, he had an intimate knowledge of both African American and Irish culture. And he wrote this song anyway, that's called The Boatman's Dance. High row, the boatman row, floating down the river of the Ohio. High row, the boatman row, floating down the river of the Ohio. The boatmen laugh, the boatmen sing, the boatman up to everything. And when the boatman gets on shore, he spends his cash and he works for more. Dance the boatman dance, dance the boatman dance. Dance all night till the broad daylight and go home with the girls in the morning. High row, the boatman row, from down the river on the Ohio. High row, the boatman row, from down the river on the Ohio. The oyster boat should stick to the shore, the fishing smack should venture more. The schooner sails before the wine, the steamboat leaves the street behind. Dance the boatman dance. That's the boatman dance. Dance all night till the broad daylight and go home with the girls in the morning. High row, the boatman row, from down the river on the Ohio. High row, the boatman row, from down the river on the Ohio. Well, I went to shore the other day to see what the boatman had to say. There I let my passion loose, they put me in the calaboose. Dance the boatman dance, dance the boatman dance. Dance all night till the broad daylight and go home with the girls in the morning. High row, the boatman row, floating down the river of the Ohio. High row, the boatman row, floating down the river of the Ohio. Sky blue jacket, tarpaulin hat, look out, me boys, for the nine-tailed cat. Dance the boatman dance, dance the boatman dance.
broad daylight to go home with the girls on the lawn. Hi-ho, the boatman row, from down the river of the Ohio. Hi-ho, the boatman row, from down the river of the Ohio. The boatman is a thrifty man, 'cause none can do as a boatman can. Never did I see a pretty girl in my life, but that she was the boatman's wife. That's the boatman dance, that's the boatman dance. Dance all night till the broad daylight to go home with the girls in the morn. Hi-ho, the boatman row, from down the river of the Ohio. Hi-ho, the boatman row, from down the river of the Ohio. Hi-ho, the boatman row, from down the river of the Ohio. Hi-ho, the boatman row, floating down the river of the Ohio.
We'd like to play in this lovely St. Patrick's Day season. We would like to start off with two Irish jigs. You know, like, of course. I mean, that's what everybody knows is Irish jigs. These two, I'm kind of delighted to play them. Athena thought of them. I didn't even remember them, to be honest with you. The first one is called Nora Sweeney's, and the second one is called Elizabeth Cullen. Nora Sweeney was let me get the name right, Castle Connell in County Limerick, and Elizabeth was from Benburb in County Tyrone. So that's kind of magic. They never met. They had piles and piles of kids and great grandchildren and all this sort of thing. And I know that. They're my two grandmothers. So that's what's like so really cool about it. Isn't that neat? So they never met, but you'd have to see the mess they created. You wouldn't believe it.
You know, not only are we sharing the stage with two National Heritage Award recipients, of course you know Dr. Mick Moloney and Billy McComiskey, but not only that, but also Billy is an amazing composer, and he failed to mention that he, of course, wrote these two jigs. So these are his compositions. And then we're going to go across the ocean, come back here. Well, I guess you never really left, but your heart is sort of in Ireland. But the next tune we're going to go into is called Richmond. And Mick used to play this tune. We learned this from Mick. You got it from
Bruce Molesky.
From Bruce Molesky.
Yeah, great Appalachian fiddler.
And you know, a lot of that Appalachian music came from the north of Ireland. And we're going to go over there and play a tune right after it that I learned from the great Mairead na Moyne called The Full Rigged Ship. And you could see they're just neighbors, this old time music and the Donegal style. Here we go.
sing a song now called Sanctuary. This song was written by Vincent Woods, a great poet from County Leitrim. And he wrote it about the area that he's from, where there are coal mines in this town called Arigna, the Arigna coal mines. They were the only coal mines in Ireland, and they shut in 1990. And this song is about kind of growing up in that area and how the mining industry affected the community, and finding sanctuary and solace in the community and in nature after the industry left. And it's kind of hard times, but Arigna is a really interesting place. I've been there, and so has Brenda and Mick. You can go for a tour and actually go into the mines now, and the tour guides are the guys who used to work there. And so, yeah, this song, Sanctuary, is about that. Here, this is home, blue-green mountains, ancestors' bones. Here the heart can heal, the wounded mind restored and made whole again. In Comold, by the ridge of the rowan tree, in the fields where I once ran wild, I close my eyes and the ghosts of our history go striding out again. Who minds of it now? Who will tell our story? Years breaking our strength in the cold pits of misery. Boys old at 16 and worn out from hutch and drill, they toil the black seas, their ghosts on the mountain still. In Comold, by the ridge of the rowan tree, in the fields where I once ran wild, I close my eyes and the pitmen are there to see, striding out again. Here, this is home, blue-green mountains, ancestors' bones. Here the heart can heal, the wounded mind restored and made whole again.
I first met Brenda Castles as one does, in Bangkok when she was on the way to Mongolia. And that was 17 years ago, I think it was. And I was in a session in an Irish pub. Believe you me, there are Irish sessions everywhere. Nobody's safe from us anywhere in the world. And there are Irish sessions in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. There even was one in olden days in Yangon in Burma before the whole thing fell apart. And there's several. One in a pub that's creatively named the Blarney Stone right now, and it's part of an emergent chain of pubs, and there's a musician's corner in every one of them. And that's where I met her, in Finnegan's pub, owned by County Louthman. And the session was nearly over, and you arrived upstairs with a concertina on your back, and the session didn't end for another 2 hours. So we stayed in touch ever since. And over the years, the Greenfields have had very few musicians from Ireland. We've had Tommy Sands, the great singer-songwriter from Rostrevern, County Down. Frank Hart, the late Frank Hart, the great singer, used to join us on occasion. And Brenda Castles, the most recent addition to the group from County Meath. And she's put out an amazing album recently, which is really the talk of Irish music. It's been reviewed everywhere in the most extraordinary light. She won't be telling you that herself, but I've asked her to play a tune from the album. Maybe talk a little bit about what the album's about.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Mick. I guess have we musicians in the crowd? We do. So I just needed to gauge kind of where I'm at with it, to how far I explain things, you know, because it gets a bit nerdy, I suppose. So we all know the common tunes in Ireland. We know there's thousands upon thousands of tunes in the Irish culture and in the Irish tradition, but there's a common core that, you know, if you're here in Philadelphia, and if you were down in where I was once in Austin, Texas, playing tunes, and if you were in, I don't know, Dingle or Donegal, everybody'd kind of know them. The Connachtman's Rambles, the Kesh, the Irish Washerwoman, all of these tunes are the heart of the music. But I suppose if you're playing since you were 5 years old, like I am, and as long as Mick has been playing, you might get a bit tired of those tunes. You know, they lose their sheen. But they are the common tunes for a reason. You know, they're great tunes. So I decided to try and take a little fresh look at them and go into the archive in Dublin and try and see if there was anything more out there. There's a lot in the archive in Dublin, we're really lucky. And it's digitised, it's online if you ever fancy a look for songs and tunes. But so I put together an album of the common tunes, but just with a little bit of a twist. So some of these are really old versions. I suppose it's kind of like nowadays we have the internet and we have the radio, and the music kind of, it jumps borders much more quickly. But, you know, the way tunes were passed from person to person was very tenuous in the past before all of that. I suppose, you know, Mick tells a story of where, you know, you'd be playing tunes and you'd be going home on the bike afterwards, and the two of you'd be travelling together, and one of you'd remember the first part of the tune and the other fella'd remember the second part of the tune, and hopefully by the morning you'd still have both of those and you'd have a whole tune. And you can imagine how that might change a tune along the way, you know. And yeah, there's a few good stories like that. So there's some versions like that on the album, where some of them are recognizably the tune that we all know and love, and some of them less so. The first one I'm going to play is a version of the Connachtman's Rambles that's very tenuously related to it, and it's a Donegal version. And you couldn't record an album without playing an Ed Reevy tune, so I'm going to play his version of the Irish Washerwoman, which is just beautiful, I think. And into a tune that Athena gave me via a friend of ours, Marcus O'Murku, and it's related to a tune called The Cook in the Kitchen. So I'll see if I can remember these ones. So. Thank you.
Well, the first Irish musician, I didn't even know when I came to America in 1973. I'd been in a music group before that called the Johnstons, and we'd made LPs and all of that, and then we broke up. The last gig we ever did actually was in the Main Point. Remember the Main Point, some of you out there? And we opened for Jerry Jeff Walker, Mr. Bojangles. Remember Mr. Bojangles? And he was a good lad, and he was a good drinker too, and we all were at the time. But anyway, I came to Philadelphia. Kenny Goldstein was the head of the folklore department at the University of Pennsylvania, and he said, because I loved his library, I used to stay with him in Stenton Avenue, not too far from here, and he'd come down, there was no windows in the basement, he'd come down in the morning to go to work, and I'd still be there. I would think it'd be 11 at night. He'd say, what are you doing there? I'd say, I'm reading your books. And he'd say, you know, it's 7:30 a.m. And I said, well, I didn't feel the hours passing. He said, you have to study folklore, my boy. And he always called me my boy. So I said, I don't have two brass farthings to rub together. I couldn't afford the price of the trip. And he said, we'll get you a scholarship. So I applied for a scholarship, and I didn't get it. And then I wrote back to him, thanking him for making me write the letter, because I hadn't figured out what I wanted to do, really. You were kind of going from day to day. That stage in your life, that's often what happens in your 20s. But I wrote him a very nice letter saying, look, I thank you for encouraging me to write the letter of application to the University of Pennsylvania. I said, in the process of writing it, I knew that whatever I wanted to do in life, it was got to do with the arts and teaching, something like that. And he was so impressed with my letter, he got me a scholarship, a special one. So the lesson for that is any time you get rejected, to try to deal with it with a certain amount of grace, I suppose. But anyway, so I ended up in Philadelphia quite unexpectedly. And I thought the music part of it was over. I didn't know about the great music scene over here. Didn't really bring the instruments at all. And then I met all the great musicians here in Philadelphia, people like Ed Reevy, the legendary composer. We played several of his tunes already tonight. And his music is part of our music everywhere in the world. You couldn't be in a music session, Brenda, could you, anywhere in the world without hearing that Reevy?
I knew them all before. Yeah. I even knew that he wrote them.
Right, he lived in Upper Derby, Glen Olden and Drexel Hill when I met him, and he died at the age of 19. We played, myself and Eugene played at his funeral. But I mean, his music is everywhere, and he never learned to read or write music, you know. Didn't matter. The music, I used to ask him how he wrote the tunes. He said it was God's gift, he said. I'd go down to he was living in Powelton Village, which was called Corktown at the time. He said after the children were in bed, he was a master plumber. He said, I'd go down to the basement and I would do exercises. And he said, on the fiddle, and if a pleasing phrase came to me, I'd build on it. And he said, and I'd make a tune. There was no recording devices then, as Brenda was saying. And then he played for people like Charlie Doherty. I never met Charlie. He was an older musician from Donegal. And if Charlie liked it, Ed would then release it to the community, and if he didn't like it, that's the end of it. So we'll never know how many tunes he composed that Charlie Doherty didn't like. He was his filtering system to the universe. Beam me up, Charlie. So I was so honoured to meet people like that, and his music. I knew his tunes. I didn't even know he'd written them. And people like John Veazey and people like Eddie Cahill. And so many other great, John Kelly, who used to play here for the Cayley group. I mean, these are all names that some of you of a certain vintage know. And I realized that the music was as powerful, maybe even more valuable and appreciated over here. We took it for granted at home, And every session you play, you sense that something special is happening, And to this day, I still feel it. And the further away you are from the source, in a way. Would you not agree, Billy? Yeah. And Athena, you learned the music in San Francisco. Maybe Athena should tell you a little bit about her story. You've met everybody at the story. Liz Hanley's from Boston, as you know. There's nothing wrong with that, as I said again. and Liz is in New York. You're traveling all over the joint. Lived in England for years, and she plays all sorts of music, symphonic music, and you play in a rock band, punk band, and if you name it, you've played it, right? But you love Irish music, and you know Brenda's story and Billy. Well, he's already told you some of his story. And Athena, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm pretty much the, epitome of the American melting pot. I'm named Athena after my great-grandfather who came from Greece, who was selling oranges on the street of Manhattan and met my great-grandmother who had come over on her own at 15 to be a secretary in New York and bought an orange from him, and that's how my grandfather was born. And he went to Rutgers University but decided to be a hobo and hitched across to San Francisco and met my grandmother, who had come from a dirt poor Sephardic Jewish family who was living in San Francisco. She was a seamstress and scraped and saved, and they had the last billy goats in San Francisco. There's still a hill named in the middle of the city named after my grandmother's billy goats, Billy Goat Hill. And then that was my dad, and he met my mom, whose father was from Trondheim in Norway. So my brother Lars is named after the Norwegian side, of course. Ben Ezra, my brother Ben, for the Jewish side. And then finally Sean, they were looking for another girl but got another boy, and he of course got the Irish name Sean. So that's kind of, and I grew up in California at the world, music camps, Alistair Fraser's Scottish fiddling camp, Lark in the Morning, world music and dance camp, and it was just this wonderland of different cultures from around the world. And wouldn't you know, each of us siblings, all four of us, play traditional music from a different part of the world. And I just loved Irish music. I went to Ireland right after high school, blew off a full scholarship to Berklee School of Music, and my parents didn't speak to me for 3 years, so I had no money at all, so I had to become a professional. That's how it happened.
Sure, you couldn't make it up, could you? The first trip, myself and Eugene, I hit it off with Eugene. It's like we'd known each other all our lives and we'd never met before we came to Philadelphia. I met him at the Philadelphia Folk Festival out in Schwenksville. And we hit it off right away. There was something about, we couldn't have been more different, Eugene, at that stage, I was kind of, shall we say, on the bohemian side, sartorially in every other way. And Eugene was I would say the best dressed musician in Irish music ever. He looked like a Victorian gentleman, for those of you who maybe had never met him. And he was the best dressed musician in Irish music, not because he had a lot of money to buy suits, it's because he knew the thrift store to go to. And it was out in Glenside, and it was beside Willow Grove Hospital, and there was an Indian surgeon there who got tired of his suits in about a month, and he bought very expensive suits and gave them to the thrift store, and he was exactly the same size as Eugene. So Eugene had about 25 of the nicest and most expensive suits in the world, and he went around like a gentleman. Those of you who know him, you remember. And he was, he was Mr. O'Donnell. And the two of us were the most unlikely duo, and we played together for 26 years, and we never had a bad word between us. And myself and Athena and Billy had the great pleasure of visiting Eugene in his home in Derry just a few months before he passed away at the great age of 88. His memory lives on through his music and through the stories that we share. The first gig we ever did outside Philadelphia was in Wilkes-Barre. We were invited up to play for the Friendly Sons of St. Patrick, and we met there some of the great musicians, part of a group called the Irish Balladeers, and we learned some songs from the coal mining tradition. I suppose in a sense the first attempt at organized labor in America was in the anthracite coal mines of Pennsylvania. People who belonged to an organization, a militant organization called the Moloney McGuire's. Their story is well known. And I learned a song up there in that first trip, my first song I learned in America from the oral tradition, from an actual singer, called When the Breaker Starts Up Full Time. And it's a song connected to the Reading Railroad. And one of the most distasteful things about living in Germantown, in fact the only thing, was having to pass Gowan Avenue every day and seeing that gangster's a great mansion on the corner of Gowan Avenue, and he was the owner of the Reading Railroad, but always keeping the miners in debt. And this is a song about when the breaker starts up full time, written by a man called Con Carbon. And the greatest living authority on Con Carbon is in the audience here. Mr. Jimmy McGill knows more about Con Carbon than any living human being. Jimmy McGill, you're a mighty man. And I met him the week after arriving in Philadelphia, right here. And it's great to see the two of us still standing. Jimmy, may you stand for a long time more. But anyway, Con Carbon was a small man with a big voice and a great songwriter. And he wrote this song, When the Breaker, the last stage in the coal mining, when it started up full time, but it never did. This is an ironic song because to keep the miners in debt. When the breaker starts up full time. Our troubles are o'er, Mrs. Murphy, for the Dutchman next door tells me straight that the mines are on full time next Monday. That's what he tells me at any rate. Sure, the boss, he said, told him this morning when he was about entering the mine, that the coal is quite scarce around Philly. So the breaker starts up full time, and it's sure if the news be true, me store bill's the first thing I'll pay. A stuffed parlour suit and a lounge I will buy, and an organ for Bridgie, hooray! Me calico shirt I will throw in the dirt, and me silk one won't I cut to shine. When we get the advance, we'll put Seamus in pants, when the breaker starts up full time. Stick me fist in the washtub, the Chinaman he'll have me trade. I'll ne'er pick coal from the dirt bank, I'll buy everything ready-made, and we'll dress up our children like fairies, and build up a house big and fine, and we'll move away from the hungries when the breaker starts up full time. And it's sure if the news be true, me store bill's the first thing I'll pay. A stuffed parlour suit and a lounge I will buy, and an organ for Bridgie, hooray! Me calico shirt I will throw in the dirt, in me silk one won't I cut to shine. When we get the advance, we'll put Seamus in pants, when the breaker starts up full time. One of the greatest dancers in America in the vaudeville era, when it wasn't fashionable for women to be in that at all. The woman's place was considered to be the home. But a lot of women broke the rules, and there was a most famous dancer called Kitty O'Neill, born in this country. Obviously, the ancestors came from the north of Ireland, and she danced with the people like Ned Harrigan in New York. Was a very famous dancer, so famous, in fact, that a tune was written after her called Kitty O'Neill's Favourite, and it was recorded by Tommy Peoples, the great musician from Donegal, published in a collection called Ryan's Mammoth Irish Music, Ryan's Mammoth Collection, or the Coles Collection of Irish Music, for the musicians here who want to learn it. And it matches the dance. It was her specialty was the sand dance, where she would put sand on the floor and then shuffle. And that you had to have a novelty as a dancer to set you apart and make a living. So we're going to do, I don't know if we ever did it before in Philly. Did we? I don't think so. This is Kitty O'Neill's sand dance. We're going to recreate it. Niall is going to come out here now. And you're not going to do any damage to this lovely stage here. He's bringing his own plank of wood, as you can see. He's walking the plank, as he said. So, God, I hope he doesn't fall off. And there he has that. So, Athena Turgis is going to play Kitty O'Neill's Champion Jig. And he's putting down the sand there, as you can see. Yeah.
It's a very high grade of sand.
He bought this sand in New Jersey today, in case you're wondering about the pedigree. We're telling you about the pedigree of the tunes. This is the pedigree of the sand. New Jersey sand.
Very impressive. He brought out the good stuff.
This is very, he's been more theatrical than usual now. And look at the hat on it, for God's sake, look at that. extraordinary Niall O'Leary. And look at the mess he's created here. God, there's sand all over the joint here. But he's going. This is the sort of fellow you'd like to have around the house, isn't it? Look at this now. Anyway, Niall is going to tell you stuff. He started an Irish dance school here in Philadelphia. He wants to tell you all about it.
In Center City, Philadelphia, in April, we're starting new classes for children and adults. We'll be announcing it officially in the next couple of weeks. You're the first to know.
Well, you know, this is the time for celebrating all things Irish, there's so much to celebrate. But it took me quite a while after I arrived in America to learn about a group of people that had been sort of forgotten, the San Patricio Regiment, and of course St. Patrick, named after St. Patrick. There were immigrants who came over here in the last 2 years of the famine, and they were looking for work, and a lot of them joined the army, and they joined the American Army, and they took part in the Mexican-American War, and a lot of them started to feel very uncomfortable. First of all, as many of you know, we Irish were not very welcome in America at that time, and we were treated suspiciously as a very unwelcome and perhaps dangerous immigrants, because we might owe our allegiance so primary to a foreign prince, the Pope of Rome, and we were very unwelcome. And in Philadelphia, there were a lot of Catholic churches burned here in Philadelphia, orphanages and convents burned in Boston, the Know Nothing movement. You probably have heard about all of that, the nativist movement at the time. And it seems that certain chapters in American history are repeating themselves, and they do, and that's for another discussion. But a lot of the people on the American Army from Ireland felt very uneasy about what they saw as a land grab. And they felt they were on the wrong side, so they did the unthinkable. They deserted. And they went over to the Mexican side and formed a regiment called the San Patricios. And eventually, of course, America won that war. A lot of the San Patricios were captured, and in the greatest mass hanging in American history, even more than the Lakota Sioux hanging, over 65 of them were hanged on one day. And the other people who weren't hanged, many of them were branded. Started to learn about that more and more. People like Dennis Clark started to be my coaches in Irish American history. The late Dennis Clark, some of you might have known him, one of the great historians in Irish American history. Wrote 11 books, had a full-time job, raised a family of 6, and headed the Fells Fund. But he acquainted me with the story of the San Patricios. But before COVID, the last 2 marches that we played were not here in America. We played in Mexico, and we were to learn that the San Patricios are revered in Mexico. Statues to them. Every high school student learns about the sacrifice of the San Patricios from Ireland for the Mexican side. They're heroes. And you were on the tour, Liz, and it was remarkable, wasn't it? I mean, the love of Ireland that exists in Mexico in March. And Liz was moved to learn a song. She'll tell you about it to celebrate the San Patricios.
Yeah, it's called John Riley, and it was, I didn't know about the San Patricios or John Riley, but the great old-time musician Tim O'Brien and Texas troubadour Guy Clark wrote this song together called John Riley about the San Patricios. John Riley came from Clifton Town in the years of the Irish hunger. They sailed away to America when the country was much younger. Well, the place was strange and work was scarce. All he knew was farming. So he followed his other Irish friends to a job in the U.S. Army. Adventure calls, some had run. This is their sad story. How some get drunk on demon rum and some get drunk on glory. Now they march down the Texas way to the banks of the Rio Grande. They built the fort on the banks above Donald Santa Ana. They were treated bad and paid worse, then the fighting started. Oh, the more they fought, the less they thought of the damned old U.S. Army. Adventure calls, some men run, this is their sad story. How some get drunk on demon rum, some get drunk on glory. Church bells rang on Sunday morning, sent his soul a shiver. Saw the senoritas washing their hair on the far side of the river. John Riley and 200 more Irish mercenaries. Oh, they cast their lot, riding north, south of the Rio Grande. Adventure calls, some men run, this is their sad story. How some get drunk on demon rum, some get drunk on glory. The flag of the San Patricios, till the Yankee soldiers beat them down at the Battle of Churubusco. 15 men were whipped like mules, on the cheeks were hard iron branded, made to dig the graves of 50 more who were hanging fate at handed. Adventure calls, some men run, this is their sad story. How some get drunk on demon rum, some get drunk on glory. John Riley stands and he drinks alone at a bar in Veracruz, and he wonders if it matters much if you win or if you lose. Well, I'm a man that can't go home, I'm a vagabond, said he. I'm a victim of some wanderlust and divided loyalty. Adventure calls, some men run, this is their sad story. As some get drunk on demon rum, some get drunk on glory. Adventure calls, some men run, this is their sad story. How some get drunk on demon rum, some get drunk on glory.
Well, we've come to the end of our evening here. It's been just brilliant to be here. I can't express how enjoyable it has been. For me in particular, this is a real homecoming. And I've been in New York now for just about 20 years, but I still bleed Eagles Green, you know. And live and die with every misfortune. I mean, you know, I'm glad we won the Super Bowl, but I mean, what attracted me to Philadelphia in the sports, I love all sports, is the tradition of heroic failure, you know. Coming from Ireland, especially. I mean, failure is not sexy, but heroic failure is. And I just love that. If you want failure, you go to Cleveland or somewhere, but I mean, you know, a bit heroic, no, that's another matter. Anyway, listen, it's been great. And Niall, when is your school starting here? Yeah. Okay. Listen, we'll be hanging out afterwards. There's so many people here that love to say hello and have a bit of a chat with before we head back. And this is a song. The last time that we sang this song in Philadelphia was in Grace Kelly's house, which has now been restored in East Falls, and Villanova University are doing the curatorial work for various programs. We were invited down to celebrate the Grace Kelly collection, her library, that is her lasting testament to Irish America in Monaco. And a very good friend of mine, Fintan Ballard, actually went to curate the music there. So we were down for that, and that's the last time we sang the song, which is was written in New York City in the 1930s by a man called Sean O'Nolan from County Wicklow. He was the piper, and he was also a storyteller, and he made films in Ireland, showed them in the background. He loved to compose songs too. We never copyrighted them. And I share one thing in common with Sean O'Nolan that bonded us forever. Sean O'Nolan lived a very fulfilling life. He raised a family of 6 in Boston, then moved to New York and lived there until 1945. And on the 2nd of October 1945, he was hit by a car and killed, a hit-and-run accident. And I won't get into the details of it, but on the 2nd of October, same time, in 2020, I was hit by a pickup truck and broke my hip here on the right-hand side. No bother at all. It's better than no time at all. But all my Thai friends who believe, they believe, you know, they're all Buddhists, and when I told them, to say, well, of course his spirit was alive, he saved you because he wanted you to sing his songs. And they wouldn't believe of any other explanation. And it got me thinking a bit. But anyway, we're going to sing the Kellys song, written by Sean O'Nolan, and thank you all for coming out. We'll be hanging out and we'll have a chat with you all. Thank you again, and thanks to the Philadelphia Ceilidh Group. Yes. And we've really enjoyed, for all sorts of reasons, being here. The sound, it's been, thanks to Dan and Bob for the sound. Thank you so much for doing the sound for us tonight and for the lighting. And thanks to the owner of the store in New Jersey that sold Niall O'Leary the sand this afternoon. Forever she'll go uncommemorated. But anyway, this is the Kellys. 3 weeks ago, last Tuesday, I left me home in Cork, but to meet me Uncle Martin Kelly living in New York. I landed in Hoboken and began without delay to find me uncle's residence located on Broadway. I went to the directory, me uncle for to find, but I found so many Kellys there that I nearly lost me mind. Well, I went to ask directions from a friendly German Jew, but he says, please excuse me, but me name is Kelly too. And there's Kelly the barman, Kelly the carman, Kelly the sailor who came from Donegal, Kelly from Derry, Kelly from Kerry, but the Kelly I was looking for I could not find at all. Travelled up to Boston, that city of great fame. I'd heard the Kellys were living there, had made themselves a name. The Kellys run the State House and the Kellys run the banks. The police and fire department, sure the Kellys fill the ranks. Dan Kelly runs the railroads, John Kelly runs the seas. Kate Kelly runs the suffragettes, and she looks right good to me. Well, I went to ask directions from a naturalized Chinese, but he says, please excuse me, but me name it is Kelly. And there's Kelly from Dublin, Kelly from Sligo, little Mickey Kelly who came from the County Clare. Sure, Kelly built the pyramids with good old Galway granite, and when Kelly discovered the North Pole, sure he found Pat Kelly there. We'll finish for real with the set that's called the Greenfield set. It came together in Seattle, I think, 1981. We've been playing it ever since. Okay, William, kick her off there. 1, 2, 3, 4.